After postponements and some fractious exchanges between their two countries, the presidents of China and the United States come together at the White House next Wednesday. Welcome to Agenda, and to discuss the upcoming summit, I'm joined by Stratfor's Vice President of Strategic Intelligence, Rodger Baker.
Well, I think what we're seeing as who prepares to come to the United States is that both sides have looked at the relationship between the two countries. They've looked at some of the very difficult issues that they have to deal with, and they've decided they want to put those aside so that this meeting can end seeming like there is some cooperation.
What cooperation could that be?
The United States has really set North Korea as the key issue to discuss. Certainly there's talk of economics, there's economic deals and trade going on, but North Korea seems to be the topic that Washington is raising as this one needs to be resolved now, and this is where we need the Chinese. It seems to us that what will come out of this, maybe not immediately out of the summit, but certainly in the not too distant future after the summit, is an agreement from the North Koreans brokered by the Chinese to return to the tables.
Returning to the tables, of course, is a long way off seeing resolution to either the issue of the Korean Peninsula or the nuclear issue.
Certainly. Obviously, when the North Koreans come back to the table, it doesn't really resolve anything. The United States has been slowly chipping away at the bar at which it expects North Korea to reach to be able to come back to the table. We're down just about to asking the North Koreans to not test any missiles, and that will allow them to come back to the table. When we get into discussions, into negotiations with Pyongyang, then it's a matter of how do we keep them from further developing weapon systems. In general, if the past is any example, you can do that for blocks of time, and then the North Koreans return to their standard behavior.
If that becomes the focus of next week's summit, then two potential rifts between the US and China will have been swept under the table: economic relations and the Chinese military build-up.
On the economic front, the United States seems right now comfortable with not pressing the Chinese too strongly. The yuan issue is probably not going to be a major portion of this discussion. The U.S. has made some excuses for the Chinese and said that if you take inflation and other things into account, the yuan has actually risen larger than it was. The U.S. is in the midst of its own economic recovery. The Chinese are taking a larger share of U.S. exports. And right now, the U.S. is just not needing or seeing the need to pick a fight with the Chinese in any significant manner on trade, on exports. The Chinese, for their part, certainly are not ready to go into a trade battle with the United States, and they're doing things to try to make Washington be more comfortable or more confident with the Chinese. They're going to be bringing a very large trade delegation. We're going to see a lot of discussion of trade and investment during this, but not much on the differences or the difficulties between these two countries on this critical issue.
What about those military issues and the points raised by Defense Secretary Robert Gates when he was in Beijing a few days ago?
On defense, the U.S. is looking to change the shape of the dialogue with the Chinese. Perhaps talk about arms control, nuclear weapons control, things of that sort. This is a little different than what we've seen in U.S.-Chinese relations in the past. The Chinese, for their part, have been making some not so subtle displays of their military power, or at least of the developments that they've been making in the military. And what they're trying to do is say, if we're going to go into talks on arms control, if we're going to go into talks on the maintenance of stability in the region, then China feels that it needs to be treated more as an equal, similar to the way the U.S. dealt with the Soviets in the past, instead of the way the U.S. has largely dealt with China up until this point.
Do you think the Americans are really ready to start dealing with the Chinese as equals?
I don't think the U.S. is really viewing the Chinese as an equal or prepared to, but they may give a little bit more concessions on this if it seems that it's going to draw the Chinese into this bilateral structure that's going to really address quantities and quality of arms in the region.
So, summing up, there may be smiles after the meeting after all.
It really does look that way. This meeting has been pushed back several times because of little mini crises in the relationship. This is probably Hu Jintao's last major visit to the United States as president. He wants to end his term in office with a strong showing with the United States, but also demonstrating that he has brought an element of stability and that he has brought the Chinese to a level of at least perceptionally equal with the United States.
Roger, thank you. Rodger Baker, Stratfor's Vice President of Strategic Intelligence, ending agenda. Join me again next week, and until then, goodbye.